John Harbaugh snapped at reporters after continuously being pressed on Lamar Jackson's injury status. We'll talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We are here for you with 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage and a jam-packed episode today. It's crossover Thursday, so John Hickman of Locked On Texans will be joining us to break down that Ravens and Texans Week 5 matchup. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about John Harbaugh snapping at Ravens reporters after being continuously pressed on Lamar Jackson's injury status, plus the Ravens injury situation right now got even worse on Wednesday with the injury report. We'll dive into all of that. Want to remind everyone today's episode of Locked On Ravens is Crossover Thursdays presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Let's just jump straight into it here. John Harbaugh got agitated after Ravens reporters continuously pressed him on Lamar Jackson's injury status. And, you know, I understand frustration for getting asked similar questions over and over again, but this is a huge story. Like Lamar Jackson being injured, we got a report on Wednesday from me and Rappaport. Lamar Jackson is going to try to play in this game, essentially like a week-to-week type of deal almost. So obviously, John Harbaugh has asked a lot about Lamar Jackson. So obviously the first question was about Lamar. And John Harbaugh said they're taking it day by day through the week. You'll see the injury reports and talks about all the guys. So he said that essentially deferring to the injury reports to see who practice and who doesn't. And, you know, a very vague answer from that one. And then he was asked about Cooper Rush. He was asked about Tyler Huntley, which was interesting. And then it kind of started with a question about Nate Wiggins, where Nate was a big topic of conversation because he got injured. And so John Harbaugh is asked about Nate Wiggins. And the question was, one guy on the injury report that you haven't been asked about is Nate Wiggins. Is he in that week-to-week range too? And John Harbaugh said, why don't we just wait and see tomorrow and you'll know more then? How about that? Which is kind of like a bit of a snippy reply, like a snappy reply from John Harbaugh. And then he was asked about JT Gray, guy on the practice squad on IR right now from special teams. He was signed after cut down day. But then there's a question about Lamar again. Just to be clear, quarterback Lamar Jackson, I know you grouped him with all the injured players, but would you say day-to-day with him? And John Harbaugh cut off the reporter and said, how about I just don't say anything? That's what I would do. Why don't we just leave it alone? And then someone from the side talked about the injury report, and John Harbaugh kind of said the injury report will be out at 4 p.m. and kind of gave a little laugh. Wasn't like a ha-ha laugh. Was kind of like a are you serious type of laugh. Again, very snappy, very snippy. I mean, again, the tone was, he was not happy. And the whole press conference's tone wasn't happy. And I get it, right? He's feeling pressure. It is completely obvious that John Harbaugh is feeling pressure right now. And look, it's okay that he is. I mean, one, he should be because the product isn't good and the results haven't been good in the playoffs over the last couple of years. But, you know, we've all felt pressure at some point or another in our lives, right? It's okay that he's feeling pressure. I understand why he's feeling pressure. But as a head coach, you have a responsibility. And again, like the response is him throwing Todd Monken under the bus and then taking a different approach with Zach Orr. There was the thing with Kyle Hamilton, where I think after the Browns game, he called lateral to Kyle Van Noy like one of the dumbest things he's seen or something along those lines. John Harbaugh, it's just felt like this season there is all this pressure on him and it's coming out and he's taking it out on other people. There's a question about Lamar and kind of how he got hurt. And John Harbaugh, again, cut off the reporter and said, no, I don't really have any information on that. And I really don't think it matters. It's not really what I'm thinking about. And then kind of moved on. But like, again, you're like cutting off reporters. And like, again, I would be frustrated and upset too if I was being asked the same question over and over again in different situations. But it is these reporters' jobs to go out there and get as much information as they can to feed that back to the public and the fans and everybody else about, hey, what's going on with the team. That's their job to do it. And so it's, I mean, look, it's just another level on top of the vibes. And if you watch the clip, I'm just reading out the quotes, but if you watch the clip, I put it on my social media on Twitter, you can tell like it was a very much like, stop asking this question, stop talking, I'm done with this type of response. A very snappy response. It felt like Harbaugh just kind of had enough and was building to that point, and he kind of just snapped a little bit there. So again, he's feeling the pressure. I would be too, and I definitely would be feeling it if I was a head coach of a team. My injury report looked like the Ravens injury report does right now. 13 players on the injury report for the Ravens, and it is not good. A lot of key contributors, obviously Lamar, but Rugiet, Marlon, Humphrey, Lamar, Patrick Ricard, Roquan Smith, Ronnie Stanley, Devontae Walker, and Nate Wiggins all did not practice. Guys who were limited, Kyle Hamilton. Emory Jones actually came back. He's not on the active roster, but his practice window opened, so that was the one piece of good news here. But Travis Jones, Tyler Linderbaum, Brent Urban, and Kyle Van Noy, all those are limited. So on top of everything, all these star players, you also now have Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum added to the report. It is just not great right now. The Ravens have a total of 22 injured players right now, including guys on injured reserve and other guys on other injured lists. And yeah, you're not feeling great about the situation right now because a lot of players who are injured play big key roles, and obviously that headlined by Lamar Jackson. So we'll be diving into the Lamar Jackson injury situation and the injury situation for both teams with John Hickman of Locked On Texans, plus key storylines, key matchups, and a lot more. So let's talk with John now about the Ravens and Texans Week 5 matchup for Crossover Thursday. I think both these teams had expectations in their own way heading into this season, and obviously you look at the records 1-3 for both of them.
Yeah, man.
Not exactly how everybody drew it up.
No, not at all. At this point, I thought the Houston Texans would be at 3-1, maybe 2-2, depending on how things would have turned out with the LA Rams. But 3-1 and 1-3 is just something that I didn't foresee. I definitely did not foresee a Baltimore Raven team that, I would describe as they look like they're defeated themselves, and it looks like they've kind of quit on their coach, honestly. So these two teams are they're 1-3, but it's a different 1-3, I think. And I think this game for both teams is a get right game. Coach John Harbaugh already mentioned that a little bit in the press conference. And for the Houston Texans, they got to look at this Baltimore Ravens team as a team that they haven't beaten. They've been embarrassed by over the last 3 seasons now. They got to get a dub, but I think that Houston has everything in their power to beat the Baltimore Ravens that the Ravens don't have to combat against at this time.
And I find it really interesting you mentioned that it looks like the Ravens have quit on John Harbaugh and kind of the coaching situation right now. I mean, look, the vibes are awful. Like it honestly, worst I've ever seen the Lamar Jackson era. Honestly, maybe even precedes Lamar Jackson in terms of how bad the vibes are right now in Baltimore. John Harbaugh getting a little snippy and snappy with reporters when talking about Lamar Jackson's injury situation, which obviously we're going to get into a lot over the course of this show. Is kind of asked the same question a bunch about Lamar because, hey, it's a big story. And John Harbaugh, he ended up not appreciating it by the end of the press conference. And again, like, he's not going to be all happy about the situation right now. But you're right. Like, on the field, the team look dejected. They look tired. It's not the vibes you want right now. And it kind of sets up for a must-win game for both of these teams. You do not want to be 1-4. And I'll actually start off with a fun little stat, John. Not necessarily fun for the Ravens, but it's kind of crazy that the last turnover the Ravens forced that was not against the Cleveland Browns, and the Ravens have played the Browns twice in this span, was the Houston Texans on Christmas Day last year. Kyle Hamilton's interception on C.J. Stroud.
All right, man. but I mean, and that speaks to just how bad. Speaks to a couple of things. And Kevin, whenever we do these crossovers or these shows, we have a good time just having a good conversation. But it speaks to, number one, how bad that DB room is for the Baltimore Ravens with Kyle Hamilton, who a lot of people consider 1A, top 3 safety in the NFL. But that also points to just how the Baltimore Ravens have had the Houston Texans number to where they're not, unless it's the Browns. And the Browns and Houston, they've been connected with each other for several seasons now for several different reasons. But, like, they have the Houston Texans number, But outside of Houston, that DB room ain't really scaring nobody. And I think this year will be the year where we look at it and say Jaire has been disappointing. In my opinion, Nate Wiggins and Kyle Hamilton have been the only two guys that you can kind of hang a hat on. Marlon Humphrey looks like he's going to retire and maybe reach out to the Locked On Podcast Network for a job. So these two teams, like for Baltimore, it's a get-right game to prove you can still beat the worst of the worst. And right now, 1-3, Houston still is one of the worst teams in the league. But for the Houston Texans, this is a weak team. They're facing injuries, and you still haven't beat them. So it should still be personal for Houston. They should be able to go into their game and take it personal, and come out with a win.
And it's so crazy too, John, because you mentioned the DB room, and there are 5 former first-round picks in that secondary. And
goodness.
Coming into the year, I said, hey, this is the best secondary in the league. Or you have all these top talents like Marlon being the slot guy, Jaire coming in on that deal. Obviously, Nate Wiggins, Kyle Hamilton. They draft Malaki Starks in the first round out of Georgia in this draft. Yeah. And, you're right. Jaire played 1 game against the Bills. He was injured for all of training camp. He was a reason why the Ravens lost that game to the Bills, and he hasn't played since. The Ravens have been saying he's been getting into game shape coming off of that injury, but that has been disappointing. Marlon Humphrey looked really bad before getting injured, and he is reportedly going to be out a couple of weeks, so I wouldn't expect to see him in this game against Houston. You're right. Nate Wiggins has been really good for them, and Kyle Hamilton obviously has had his moments too. Hamilton's an all-around player. He's someone that's great, but Malaki has shown some rookiness, which is to be expected. I'm not expecting Malaki to come in there and be the next Ed Reed or anything, but when you're a team that's contending like the Ravens, or when you're trying to contend like the Texans are, sometimes you can't afford to wait for some of these rookies to figure it out when you're trying to compete. And that, I think, is the tough thing. And so for the Ravens, their injury situation, they have 13 players on their injury report from their 53-man roster. That is not including the 9 that they already have on injured reserve or other forms of injured lists. So 1 month, 4 weeks into the season, the Ravens dealing with some form of 22 different types of injuries, 23 if you include Jaire into that equation. So it's about a bunch of rookies stepping up and guys taking advantage of opportunities. But John, we know how good that Houston defense has been in certain categories and areas this year. And we also know that Texans offense found their stride against that Tennessee Titans team. And I think that's what they needed, right? A team that they can say, hey, we're a talented team. We haven't shown it through these first 3 weeks. Let's go out there and let's beat up on a team we should beat up on. That's a really big confidence building one, I think, for Houston coming into this game.
And it's how they did it. The first 3 quarters for the Houston Texans, I was at that game and I was just ready to leave. But they go into the end of the third quarter with a score on that drive, and then they scored 2 more times in the fourth quarter. How they got it going, getting the rookies involved, which a lot of people here in Houston, from the fan base, the people in the media, have kind of been beating the tables and saying, screaming, get those rookies involved. And so I think that's a big storyline to look at. How will the Houston Texans rookies and inexperienced players fare against the Baltimore Ravens rookies or their inexperienced players that are not used to playing a number of snaps that they may have to play this Sunday? And then also, man, a big storyline for me is just 15. You know what that number is? It's not Carmelo Anthony's jersey. You know what the number is?
Nikola Jokic's jersey.
It's that jersey, yeah, but that number is the amount of times Lamar Jackson has been sacked this year through 4 games. Right? And that number would have been a little bit higher if you finished that game out, depending on if they would have let him go out there swinging. So, like, both of these teams, Kevin and our listeners, it feels like just a tale of 2 1-3 teams, right? While the Houston Texans could use that Tennessee game as a moment of ascension, it feels like for the Ravens, it's starting to descend for that program right now. And that's why I think this is an even game, but I think this is a game where Houston should be able to come out and be better at all of the things that the Baltimore Ravens have no answer for. And protecting their quarterback is one of them.
You know what else number 15 is? It's Cooper Rush's number. So coming up in the second part of the show, we're going to be talking about the Lamar Jackson situation. Is he going to play? Is he not? What does it look like if he does or doesn't? Plus, some big matchups to watch for both the Ravens and the Texans. So be sure to stay tuned. We have plenty coming your way on this crossover edition of both Locked On Ravens and Locked On Texans. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. And the NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. And whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. And over on FanDuel right now, it's the Houston Texans being the road favorites against the Ravens right now in week 5. 1.5 points is the spread right now. Houston favored by 1.5. So maybe you like Houston as the road favorite. Maybe you like the Ravens as the home underdog. Regardless, FanDuel is the place to be. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And the show is brought to you by Mazda. And Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Back here, Locked On Ravens, Locked On Texans. Kevin Oestreicher, John Hickman, still rocking out with you here on this crossover Thursday edition of the show. John, huge matchup for these two teams. It's not the battle of the 4-0 monsters of the AFC or anything like that.
Battle of the disappointing.
Yeah, battle of the teams need to get their seasons back on track, and a big one would do that. Now, the Ravens were in this situation last week with the Chiefs. 1-3 Ravens, 1-3 Chiefs. And the Chiefs, obviously, they were able to pull themselves back to 500. But the Ravens might be doing this without Lamar Jackson. And that is the big storyline here.
It's a big hill for Houston.
Obviously, I know. Yeah. For what Lamar brings to the table, we know who Lamar Jackson is. We know how great of a player he is and the problems that he provides for a defense. If it's not Lamar, and Lamar, by the way, did not practice on Wednesday with that hamstring injury, and the reports are probably unlikely to play on Sunday, Cooper Rush, the longtime Dallas backup, would be the guy that would step in. And Cooper's a different player than Lamar. And if Lamar's not out there, Houston will be able to pin their ears back a little bit more. They won't have to be as worried as the option plays or the misdirections or anything crazy like that. Plus, Cooper can't escape the pocket the way Lamar Jackson can. So for guys like Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter and all those pass rushing options that Houston has, you know, if you go out there and get to Lamar, it's different, because it's not just about getting to Lamar, it's about getting him down. But if you get to Cooper Rush, he's not going to have the ability to escape the way that Lamar does. Lamar masks some poor offensive line play at times for sure. So, I think that's a matchup to watch. I mean, just whoever it is at quarterback, because even if it is Lamar, we know that Houston defense, pass-wise, they're a top 5 pass defense right now. I know Derrick Stingley's a bit banged up, but he should be out there, right, John? Is that the consensus?
Yeah, the consistent start right now is Derrick Stingley will be out there. He fought through the oblique injury to play against Tennessee. I think that will continue against Baltimore. You also highlighted the Houston Texans defense, number 1 in points per game allowed right now in the NFL. They're not giving up a ton of yards. They're not giving up a ton of points. This is a damn good defense, right? And I think this defense can only get better if you look at the offense not putting them out there as much. So the perfect example that I talked about on my show Wednesday was the Houston Texans against, and this is a key matchup of mine, by the way, the Houston Texans against Baltimore. They have to run the ball. And it ain't by explosive run plays. Houston may get an explosive run play here or there, but they got to be able to run that ball at least 20 or more times. That's how you control the time of possession. That's how Houston has been able to keep some of these games close, but controlling the time of possession, running the ball. And oh, by the way, at home this year, not a lot of games, so those numbers may be, tricky, but the Ravens are allowing 170 rushing yards at home. The last 3 games, they've allowed 152 rushing yards. The Baltimore Ravens are not a good run defense right now. Of all of their issues, not being able to stop the run may be where Houston can come in and be sneaky and get a win. So I think when you look at what the Houston Texans offer on defense and what they offer on offense, the main thing for me is being able to run that ball in short down situations. That is where you get the best version of this offense for the Houston Texans.
I'll just say this, John. It's not only they're a bad run defense; they're just a bad defense.
They're bad defense altogether. No doubt about
what
it.
It is. I'll read off stats here, and we can really feel how bad this Ravens defense is with these stats. The Ravens right now are 27th in the league in rushing yards allowed. They're 29th in the league in passing touchdowns allowed. They're 31st in the league in passing yards allowed. 31st in the league in rushing touchdowns allowed. 31st in the league in first downs allowed. 31st in the league in total yards allowed.
It's bad.
Last in the league in points allowed. It's bad all the way around. And the injuries don't help, but the play calling from Zach Orr hasn't been good. Like in general, it's been really bad. And I want to stick on the run game for a second here too, because you make a really good point about establishing the run early for Houston, kind of getting into that rhythm and in that groove. It can, I think, open up a lot of things. But I think it's going to be the same way for the Ravens. I mean, if Cooper Rush is in there, I think you got to go back to that Tennessee Titans, Ryan Tannehill playbook. Just Derrick Henry. And I know, John, that Derrick Henry, he likes playing Houston a little bit. He likes playing them. 280 carries, 1,578 yards, and 13 touchdowns in 15 games. The last time we saw Henry against Houston, obviously, was Christmas Day last season. 27 carries for 147 yards and a score. Now, Houston actually, his last 2 games in Tennessee, he played against Houston, held Henry pretty in check. 12 for 42, and then 16 for 9 in that 2023 game in December, which was crazy. But then he had that stretch from 2019 to 2022 where he had four straight 200+ yard rushing games against just
it got ugly.
Just Madden numbers out there for Derrick Henry. So that to me is, I think, what the strategy for the Ravens should be. Now that also means that the Ravens offensive line has to block well. And the Ravens have had a really tough year from Andrew Voorhees and Daniel Falele, their guards. Roger Rosengarten has not taken a year 2 leap. Ronnie Stanley might not even play in this game. He is one of the injured Ravens players. And if it's not him, it'd most likely be Joe Noteboom, former Rams player, who's stepping in for them on the offensive line. And Tyler Linderbaum was added to the injury report on Wednesday with a calf injury. So their whole O-line right now is either struggling or banged up. But for Houston, I want to ask a question about the run game. We know Joe Mixon is not playing in this game. He maybe won't play all year, according to some people right now. We don't know the full extent of his injury. But Woody Marks is taking on a role.
Yeah, man.
And everyone thought, hey, Nick Chubb's going to play a role. Maybe Davian Pierce will get a redemption arc. No, it is Woody Marks who is stepping up. I want to learn a little bit more about him, John. What does he bring to the table? Tell the Baltimore faithful a little bit about who Woody Marks is.
So he's in an offense, Nick Kelly's offense, that I think, do I ever see him being a Pro Bowler? Do I ever see him being an All-Pro? No, but he's a very good running back. And I mean, you look at some of these young backs at times, traditionally they like to hit outside. He can run inside the tackles. He does a very good job with his vision, does a very good job of hitting the hole and trying to pick up yards. But what makes him so good, potentially, so where he can be special, is how he impacts the game on the ground and through the air. Coming out of USC, the talk was, this guy can be dangerous in open field as a pass catcher. And what I like about Nick Caley from what we saw Sunday, he's going to intentionally get him involved in the passing game. Screens, Texas routes, option routes out of the backfield. And he does a very good job of picking up blitzes on the edge. And so you look at a running back, a lot of us may say a young running back, but if my memory corrects me, not correct me, I'm sorry, but if my memory serves me right, he was in college for 5 years.
Wow.
These young running backs or these younger players now are not necessarily as young as we may used to refer them to. Like the COVID year helped a lot of these guys. And with that extra year of football, that only got them better. So he's a player that I think for Houston can have a very dynamic career. I'm going to liken him to James White, and I'm doing that because James White played under that New England Patriots system. Nick Caley had some time around James White, but he was a running back that ran the ball well, but also his best year, he gave you almost 800 receiving yards. Just somewhat of a dual threat type of receiver, not somebody that – I put it like this. If he reaches his peak, his ceiling, you may look at him like a James Conner type of running back. Not as big, but can hurt you on the ground and through the air. And I think that's what the Houston Texans need right now as they learn a new offense.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's going to be one of the guys that the Ravens they have to keep an eye on him throughout the course of this game because
Gonna have to.
He stepped up to the plate. I'm also really excited for what I believe if Nate is able to play. And again, it's just there's so many matchups I would love to see, but all these guys are injured. I'd love to see Nico Collins versus Nate Wiggins for a full game. Like I'd love to see those guys battle back and forth with each other, but I don't know if Nate's going to play because he obviously didn't practice on Wednesday, along with almost 25% of the Ravens roster. So there are a lot of cool matchups I think could maybe make an impact here. I think the Ravens D-line versus the Texans O-line is also another one I'm going to watch here.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Where should Houston Texan fans' concern be right now?
I would probably say it's with Derrick Henry. There aren't a lot of aspects right now of the team that are working well. I mean, for example,
Kevin is defeated, y'all. I've never seen Kevin defeated.
I'm gonna say this.
I've never seen Kevin this defeated.
Let me read off for you this injury report because we're not just talking about players that are just like second string, like 53rd man on the roster. We're talking the guys who didn't practice: Chidobe Awuzie, Marlon Humphrey, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Ricard, Roquan Smith, Ronnie Stanley, Tez Walker, and Nate Wiggins. The guys who were banged up are Kyle Hamilton, Travis Jones, Tyler Linderbaum, Brent Urban, and Kyle Van Noy. That's like a huge chunk of their team. Jeez. 13 players that are from their active roster that are on that injury report. And they're probably not going to get all of them back. Like Ricard has been a big loss for them. So, I mean, look, the Ravens, they need to generate pressure badly against this Houston team. The Ravens have 4 sacks all season. They're down at the bottom of the league in pressure rate. They need to get pressure on CJ Stroud, force that internal clock to speed up, force him to make a couple of bad throws, and maybe hope a guy like TJ Tampa, who was actually the Ravens' highest graded player against the Chiefs in week 4, second-year corner from Iowa State, maybe he can make a play and step up to the plate there. So I think for Texans fans, where I'd be the most concerned from a Ravens perspective, because the run game has been good. Like Derrick Henry's been a good player this season. And when he gets downhill, Derrick Henry's he's like a train, right? The more speed he gets, the further he gets along, the harder he is to stop. So if Houston can't stop him on first contact or even get to him before the line of scrimmage, he's a problem. And, no one wants to tackle Derrick Henry when he's running down the field at full speed. He can hit over 20 miles an hour. He's a fast dude considering how big he is. So it's a recipe for disaster for the Ravens and get their run game going. But again, it's going to depend on the offensive line and kind of how things are. The vibes are just bad now, John. I'll just say it straight up. The vibes are bad. But you know what? Give us an opportunity for either the Ravens or the Texans.
With a wire bad. That's how.
Man, you're getting down to must win, and if it's not a must win, maybe a change, and maybe it's a coaching change or a personnel change has to happen at that point. So coming up, we're going to be diving into how each team can actually win this game. Can the Texans come into M&T Bank Stadium and win, or can the Ravens defend their home turf? Stay tuned. A lot coming your way here on this crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Ravens and Locked On Texans. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. And the NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Gametime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love zone deals too. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seats. You save big. It's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Moving along, Locked On Ravens and Locked On Texans crossover Thursday. Kevin Oestreicher, John Hickman still hanging out with you here, talking about this pivotal Week 5 Ravens and Texans matchup. It's a huge one. It's a massive one. Also want to, again, remind everyone, this crossover Thursday edition is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. John, let's dive into it. We know that there are pathways for both of these teams to win the game. Now, obviously, depending on the Ravens' injury situation, Lamar Jackson and how that goes, the path could look a little bit different. But in your eyes, from the Houston perspective, what do they have to do to make sure they pick up a win here?
A player can't beat a unit. So you talk about Derrick Henry. If everybody else is out on that offense, and if that offensive line is just, even healthy, they weren't good. Derrick Henry can't beat the defensive unit for the Houston Texans. Flip it. I say Kyle Hamilton is active out there, right? Kyle Hamilton, a safety, can't beat the unit of the Houston Texans offense. So that's number one for me. Secondly, I really do think, and here are some numbers that I think are important to include, like for the Houston Texans, 2nd and 1, or from second down, 1 to 3 yards to go, 4.2 yards per carry, 6 first downs. Second down with 4 to 6 yards to go, 8.7 rushing yards gained. CJ Stroud, 6 of 9 and 96 yards, and a total of 8 first downs combined on the ground and in the air out of 13 plays. They are going to have to be good on first down, but really take advantage of those good first downs that the second down, the second down that the first down will grant you. So for Houston, they can't play behind the sticks. That first down play, it needs to be between 3 to 4 yards on average. That way, when they get to that second down, they're able to go into their bag and play action, bootleg, run the ball effectively up the middle, or they just go flat out and do another quick pass. But they got to be successful on first down, so that second down allows for them to open up the playbook. If they do that and use that, that model to go up against a weak defense, I think we can see the Houston Texans continue what they left off on against the Tennessee Titans, and put up points against a beat up and banged up Baltimore Ravens team.
I think from the Ravens side of things, I'm glad you mentioned, each specific down, particularly first down, right? It's important to get into second and short situations and go there and make sure that you're not putting yourself behind the sticks, as you mentioned. But to me, for the Ravens, I'm going to say third down offense and defense has to be better. And it has to be exceptional, honestly, in this game if you want to be able to win it. The Ravens' conversion rates are terrible defensively. They're 28th in the league in red zone percentage. They're 27th in the league at fourth down percentage. They're 24th in the league at third down percentage defensively. You cannot allow the Texans to continue to extend drives. That's been something that's hurt the Ravens all year. I mean, the Chiefs, that game, the Ravens came up with multiple huge third down stops only to let them get it on fourth down. It continued drives. It allowed them to get points. You have to be able to stop this Houston Texans offense because you don't want them to get momentum. You don't want your defense to get tired out, especially with maybe the lack of players you're going to have in this one with injuries. It's just all around an effort there to be able to rally to the ball, get pressure, come up with big stops. That's really huge. If Lamar Jackson is not able to play, I just kind of think, hey, you got to slop the game up. Like, I just think that's how teams look at it when they're trying to beat the Ravens. Like, okay, how do you stop a team that's so good, or the offense of Lamar Jackson? You slop up the game. I think that's what you have to do against this Houston team, where you run with Derrick Henry. Hopefully they activate Keaton Mitchell for that game. He is someone I think could make a big impact, assuming he is active. John Harbaugh said there's a chance, but I don't know what that means. And John Harbaugh speaks, so we'll see. But I think, in my opinion, you have to run the ball effectively to start, because that will force the Texans to respect that. Because against Derrick Henry without Lamar Jackson, much like we saw in Tennessee, you can just stack the box and kind of pin your ears back and go. But if the offensive line gets enough push, gets to the second level, Derrick Henry rips off those big runs. But by the way, Derrick on the season right now, I mean, he's playing good football. He's averaging 5.8 yards per carry, but
Yeah.
he only has 49 attempts through 4 games this season, which is far too few.
One of those games, I was like, why isn't he in the game right now? It's still a close game. I think it was a 3rd and short or maybe a 4th and short, and he wasn't out there. Then he couldn't punch it in. What's going on with that offense is what I'm kind of wondering.
Yeah, and like John Harbaugh, he eviscerated Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, for that. And, while he's correct in that, saying the personnel decisions need to be better, the 3rd down and short play calls and all that stuff, the vibes, I'm just telling you, I'll keep coming back to it, John. The vibes are just bad right now in Baltimore. John is great. Be sure to check him out over at Locked On Texans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all I have here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. On the way out, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Regular show comes out Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We got the Locked On Ravens watch-alongs during games, instant reaction shows after games, Locked On Ravens squad show on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, and after games with myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. Bonus episodes on the weekends when there are headlines, and just daily Ravens coverage each and every single day. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.